right? You guys haven't started hawking Polymarket Studio. You guys haven't started branching out to read for gold or athletic greens. Like Jimmy Dore, I knew it was over a long time ago when he started hawking gold and silver. I was like, that's some Ben Shapiro shit. It's all over but the crying, right?
So
There's a certain point when people, like, when Joe Rogan took the $100 million, Gavin and I have talked about it. Even if the politics were gone, even if he hadn't talked about politics as much, and even if he'd still just been like a little cringy and talked too much about, like, you know, swimming when it doesn't really seem like it's a real interest of his, I'd put that out of my mind. But the show lost something. It lost a little bit of the, you know, respect that you have for a show that doesn't take corporate money, right? And he always did ad reads, so it's a little bit different. But you know what I mean? Once it's tainted, once, you know, the what got you to the dance becomes not good enough for you, and you kind of turn your nose up at it and you're like, how can I sell out? People don't love it, right? You guys have always been able to not just survive, but thrive. You've expanded. You have Ryan Grimm, who I think is, you know, I said earlier, one of the great foreign policy reporters in all of America. What him and Jeremy Scahill have put together at Dropsite is truly incredible. It's invaluable for the people to be able to read and access that. I was so excited when they left The Intercept. I could hardly take it. It's been, you know, even more than we could have ever asked for from them. So you guys have been able to incorporate that into breaking points, and you still aren't taking corporate cash. How do you pull it off? And you have people reach out to you and be like, yo, we're Coca-Cola. We want to give you $100 million.
I mean, we've had a number of potential advertisers reach out. And I think the key was that when we started the show, Sagar and I have had a very clear cut understanding of what we were willing to do and what we weren't. And so there can't be any sort of like slippery slope. It's just, no, we're not doing ad reads, period. Don't care how much you're going to pay me. Don't care who you are. It could be like, you know, Puppies for Children Are Us or whatever, like the most beautiful product in the world, but we're just not doing that. We're never going to talk to an advertiser or a sponsor. Everything has to be at arm's length. We're going to balance, you know, the programmatic ads with direct audience premium memberships, because you also have to worry about audience capture too. And I do think maybe partly because we have this ideological divide on our show. Like, I always know that there's going to be a portion of the audience that hates what I'm saying. So I can't really be audience captured no matter what, because we just have that like divide as part of what we signed up for in the deal. But we just, you know, really stay true to those values. And like, we're really fortunate. The channel is really successful. It's successful beyond my wildest dreams. Like, I'm good with that. I'm happy. I don't need to grab for some, you know, giant pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. We feel really proud of what we've been able to build. And I think one of the also challenges moving forward is to help people understand that just because you're on YouTube or you're a podcast doesn't mean that you're independent, doesn't mean that you're uncorrupted, doesn't mean that you're any different or less propagandistic than mainstream news. In fact, in many instances, many of these channels are actually worse. So, you know, for us, I think it was just being really clear upfront and understanding the marketplace. And, you know, we're really fortunate. We also got to start at the Hill. So we got to understand the landscape before we jumped in with our own show. So we weren't like figuring things out as we went. We kind of knew what we were getting into. And so we're able to build it that way. But yeah, I appreciate you saying that though. It's very kind. I mean, I am proud of what we've been able to do and sustain through all kinds of different political ups and downs and different news cycles and different, you know, this team's up, that team's up, whatever.
I mean, you guys should be as proud, probably prouder than you are. I mean, it's truly something to remark at, given the fact that.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
off. Oh no, I was just going to say, given the fact that everybody else is selling, you know, the progressive movement down the river, you've had conviction, you've been able to grow. It's something that we can look up at and admire and say, these guys did it. You know, it makes it more attainable for everyone else.
I also think it has to be pointed out that the Hills Rising has just totally gone off a cliff as far as its quality. Do you have any observations about the way they've run your brand into the ground entirely?
It's weird. It feels weird. It feels weird. I gotta say. I mean, at this point, we've done Breaking Points longer than we did Rising, so it feels a little removed and distant. But especially for a while, it was so strange to have this thing that truly Sagar and I built. Right, like the concept of it, the approach, the ideological like all of the radars, all of it, like we built. And then to have someone else mouthing the words like, what's on your radar? I'm like, what is this? This is so weird to have this like phantom ghost product out there. I guess the best thing I could say is it's a testament to the strength of the concept that it still exists to this day, even in like such a strange and bizarro world form. But I don't know. It is a weird thing. I have to confess, every once in a while I'll go and check in, like, what's going on over there? But
Just laugh.
Always a pleasure. And one last thing I wanted to say to you guys, I know you sometimes like poke fun at yourselves for, being the drama channel or whatever, but if new media is now as powerful as it's being sold as being, there needs to be media critics. Like, that's not looked down upon as a role when it's applied to mainstream press. So I don't think you guys should like deride the role that you're filling in the marketplace. It's important, and it actually needs, it needs to be done, and it takes courage to do it.
I really appreciate you saying that. Gavin and I, we have to, keep our heads from getting too big because we're so excited to not have day jobs. You know what I mean? So it's good to, just, poke fun at ourselves and lean into the silly and Billy things, yeah, sometimes you just have to call that shit out. Do you have any thoughts that you want to share on your way out about the miserable failure of the Young Turks and how they're blaming homeless people for fires, and how Anna Kasparian has seemingly left the left and doesn't want anything to do with other left-wing channels? I know you have a working relationship with Cenk. We don't want to ask you to.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, I almost got out of here without getting asked this question.
Well, it's the band. I thought Gavin was going to ask, and I was like, well, let me just.
You don't have to answer if you don't want to.
Yeah,
No. What I will say is, to me, it's just disappointing. Like, because we have so few voices that have any sort of platform and power. So to have, I think Anna and Cenk, I think they're both really talented. I think they've both been very important to the progressive movement. And so it's just one of my like disappointments of this moment that they're not leading the charge alongside everybody else. So I guess that's my short summary of how I feel about it.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think more than anything, beyond the personalities involved, Cenk, Anna, whatever, it's just indicative to me of the retreat of this online left energy that was so aggressive when I first started tuning in back in 2014, 15. It's almost, unrecognizable to see these people now and the way they talk versus the way they did then.
Totally. And to make a sort of broader point, outside of Cenk and Anna, moments like this are, you're going to have people who like really step up, who really surprise you, and you're going to have people who disappoint you. And it's important to learn. It's important to take stock, right, of who was where and who said what and who did what. Because even though it feels like the Trump moment is like he's all powerful and it's going to last forever, like, that's not true. We all know that there's going to be a backlash and there's going to be a shift back in the other direction. And a lot of people are going to pretend like they were, there and allies all along. And, it's just important. It's important to take note of who said what when it was difficult. Right. I feel the same way with like people who, 10 years later were like, the Iraq war was really bad. It's like, well, I'm glad you got there, but what were you saying at the time when you were like, cheerleading it? And totally on board with it. You guys are too young that it was not even like a thing, but
I know. Or James Carville coming out now to say that Bernie Sanders was right.
Bernie was right. It's like, okay, great. But you also were
8 years ago.
Right. And you were a primary opponent of it. Like, you were trashing him. So that's not all, water under the bridge. But I think it's important to take stock of who's where right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Krystal. Sorry to snipe you at the end.
Oh, no. And thank you so much for the kind words about our show and the role that we play. It really does mean a lot that you view our show that way. And we really appreciate it. Like we said.
I'm a fan. I watch you guys. I enjoy it. So
that's crazy to think about. Don't tell us that. But
it's always my pleasure to get to chat with you guys. Take care.
Look out the door if you hear an ambulance. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there, sir.